welcome. Thanks for coming. My name is James Dorado. I lead data analytics at Bilt Rewards. Got a few of my teammates here, and we're just going to give you a little talk about kind of our DBT journey, some of the major problems we're solving, and what it's been like kind of working with the DBT team, who's been great. So first of all, Bilt Rewards. Can I see show of hands who's familiar with this? Maybe who has the card? OK, that's pretty good. All right, I feel like we got half. If you don't have the card, please go apply now. No, I'm kidding. But seriously, do. Should have put my personal referral link up here, but I didn't. So anyway, we're a rewards program that rewards you where you live, in your neighborhood, and where you travel. So really kind of started by this concept of earn points on rent, your single biggest expense. Why do you earn nothing on it? Doesn't feel fair. So that was kind of our founding mission. Now we're expanding into really a broader rewards program. So like I said, I'm James, VP of Data Analytics at Bilt. I will hand it off to Ben.
Hey everybody, my name's Ben. I am a Senior Director of Analytics here at Bilt. I've been at Bilt now for about 6 months and kind of leading the Semantic Layer efforts, which I'll talk to towards the end.
I'm Nick, newest member of the team, been here for about 2 months. Senior Manager Analytics, leading marketing and personalization efforts across the business.
Cool. So I arrived at Bilt in January. I was probably data team member number 3. We are obviously a startup. We are a Series C company. We're growing very fast. We didn't have a lot in the way of data infrastructure, data modeling. We did not have DBT. So when I arrived, I'm a longtime DBT user. I've been using it for 5+ years. I was like, we need DBT, obviously. We went down the path of starting to implement core, but like I said, really lean team, 3 total human beings, not a lot of time in the day, lots of stakeholders to answer questions for. So after a month or so of hacking at DBT core and trying to convince our lead data engineer to spin up Airflow for me, it was clear that wasn't really quite going to work out. And I was already in talks with the DBT team, and they were kind of talking about cloud. And I said, hey, this feels like an opportunity to kind of just leapfrog ahead. Our business is moving very fast. We value kind of speed over everything. And so this was really kind of an instant enabler. And it also allowed us to kind of as we grew the team rapidly, to say, hey, you can slot right into this kind of workflow. You can use this tool, and it's really intuitive, easy to use if you've never used DBT before. So our data warehouse at a glance, we use BigQuery, 150 schemas, 57 billion rows. We've got 7,000 plus consumers. Only about 100 or 200 of those are internal. Most of those are external, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later. And those are really like B2B partners who are looking at data with a very critical eye, using that data to run their business, and we need kind of the utmost level of trust with them. 8,000 tables, 63 terabytes of data, just some big, scary numbers, right? OK, so DBT we all know and love. It's a game changer. I love this graphic. I use this to pitch it internally because when I went to our leadership initially, they were like, what is this DBT thing? What is this logo? What is this fidget spinner looking thing? But anyway, this kind of helped really explain to them, here's what we need to do in order to kind of build trust to serve proper outputs internally and externally, and also prepare us for fun things like ML and AI. So before DBT, after DBT. This is literally, there was a little more context around it, but this is literally a slide I presented to our CEO, CTO, and COO. I was like, we're doing some transformation, great. We have no documentation. We have no lineage. We can't really do change management. We have no version control. We have no testing. We don't really have orchestration either. It's pretty scary for somebody like me who was used to all of these things. But DBT really solves them all, right? And so that's not anything new for those of you using DBT. But I thought it would just be cool to share kind of how I explained it to an executive. if any of you are trying to get dbt adopted, this kind of framework I think is helpful. And the bonus here is really cool because the knowledge graph that dbt generates for you is really powerful, right? You can do a lot with that beyond just the standard BI use case. It prepares us in a way that we weren't ready before for ML, and opens up all these kind of cool LLM and Gen AI use cases. So dbt for Bilt, we've got all these sources right on the left side here, ingesting data from like 30 plus application DBs, a bunch of different event streams, direct integrations with MasterCard, Wells Fargo, various property managers, et cetera, file drops, a whole mess of stuff. It all comes into to BigQuery. We transform it in dbt with a little bit of magic, and then we are able to activate that data, BI, as well as those customer-facing portals, as well as in-app experiences, which is really cool. And so we'll get into a little bit of that in a minute. But this is kind of our journey over the last 9 months. So it was a lot. It happened pretty quick, but it's been going great so far. And with that, I will hand it off to Nick.
So with all these wonderful implementation of the new technologies, we can really start doing fun things with the data. And how do you start fun? With a spaghetti DAG, of course. But if you squint really, really hard and look at the end of that DAG, you can see a gold status data set. We're working on platinum status. That'll be coming soon. But for the moment, this is a model that powers our front-end user experiences across the app and website. This data set is synced via our reverse ETL tool Census into a PostgreSDB, which is then orchestrates across our CRM tools, our website, and our app to serve personalized experience to users based on their past behavior and their engagement with benefits in real time. So as you can see, with all the benefits that we offer our users, that all can be funneled and collapsed into a model that can be served back to the users. We also use this census tool to activate our data and generate user audiences so that we can better target our users across our paid ad platforms, our CRM tool, and as mentioned in the app and website. So we've seen some really positive results from that. Only launched a couple weeks ago, so we're looking to develop on this, bring in some AI, ML, you name it, bring it from gold to platinum. And with that, I'll pass over to Ben to talk about our partner-facing experiences.
Awesome. So what James and Nick spoke about thus far is our kind of initial setup of our dbt cloud, right? Mostly for internal use cases, making sure that our reporting, data required for production, as Nick talked about personalization, was up and running. But our consumers are only one part of our business. You saw earlier, neighborhood, home, and travel. It's kind of the 3 pillars of Bilt. And for 2 of the 3 of those, we have B2B-facing portals. Those B2B-facing portals, while have some kind of action-oriented items, are mostly pretty visualizations, graphs, trying to encourage our B2B partners to do more with Bilt. Whether that's start campaigns, offer complimentary items at dining restaurants, et cetera. We want to show our merchant partners and our building partners that Bilt is really doing a great job for them thus far. How we were doing it before was incredibly expensive. So the implementation when James and I joined Bilt was Looker embeds. This absolutely served our use case initially, but because we were being charged by user as we grew our business, so did our costs. And it was purely linear. The more property managers we signed on, the more merchants and dining restaurants we signed on, the more expensive it was going to be. We realized this quickly, and we're identifying additional potential solutions for this problem. We scoured for a while, but as we were kind of pushing our dbt cloud journey early on, we started talking to Jordan, to Nick, to Roxy, and hearing about the dbt semantic layer and how powerful it really could be. So here's how we're thinking about it today. Our data warehouse is that kind of backwards looking chart, I know. Data warehouse is at the bottom of this slide. Data warehouse, which we use BigQuery. dbt, we do our transformations. We also, within dbt Cloud, build our semantic layer. Semantic layer including our dimensions, our measures, and our metrics. As Nick showed, the business is incredibly complex. We are not like Draffleshot with one transaction log and a couple easy dimensions. We probably have like 60 to 70 different transaction logs for different user actions. We have a ton of different dimensions, various different join patterns, slowly changing dimensions, you name it. We've tried to play around with it. And we've modeled all of that within the semantic layer. The reason to do that is that this beautiful pink star over there is the GraphQL endpoint, which makes it incredibly simple for our services and software engineers to query directly and expose, essentially, BigQuery SQL execution directly to a front-end interface. These results power beautiful pictures, graphs, reports, et cetera, that users are able to flexibly interact with within our product. So not only was it expensive, it also was a little ugly. Investing in our own front-end visualization capabilities is something we've already done. We have a consumer-facing app. It's easy to port over our existing consumer-facing visualizations right over to our front end. So all we really needed was the data. And using dbt semantic layer with metric flow or the ability to query that, it became super simple. And of course, cost savings went way down. This is one semantic layer use case that we were talking about. And I think it's really powerful. But our B2B offerings is only really one of the ways that we're thinking about using the semantic layer. The other two, I think, are also incredibly important. The second, we'll be using the semantic layer for BI. And the third, we'll be using the semantic layer to power internal machine learning algorithms and AI LLM. The B2B use case, I think, is a really great first step for us into entering the world of the semantic layer, trying to model our business with, as like semantics, right? That the name itself implies, modeling our business so that people can understand it, end users can understand it, B2B users can understand it, that we can query it really easily. And once we're there, BI and AI are really our next steps. The part that we're most excited about for the semantic layer, and happy to chat with you all if there's questions or thoughts as we go through this, is that we are defining it once. I think that is the DBT, the DBT transformation layer, the kind of classic DBT cloud, set out that goal as well. Don't need to keep writing that query, making small modifications. Write it once, store it in GitHub. Now you have a true model that you can use everywhere. The semantic layer is really that extension for BI and for B2B use cases, and additionally for LLMs. So while this is a great win, cost reduction, easily convince an executive to invest in this when you see a graph as simple as this, there's a lot of other use cases that we're excited about to push forward. So with that, I wanted to make sure we left a lot of time for questions. We have plenty. Feel free to raise your hands, or we also will probably leave like 5 minutes or so for folks to just chat with us up here. So thank you. Questions? Yeah? That is a great question. So the question, yeah, I'll repeat the question. The question was, that clash between Looker and the semantic layer within Looker and our dbt semantic layer. And the short answer is that today they clash pretty heavily. But our goal is to avoid that. So there's kind of two paths that we're considering. One is using a different BI tool. But two, there's a few products out there that enable kind of this, like, it's almost like a transformation layer of the semantic layer into a lookML format or choose your end state semantic layer format. A lot of the BI tools in this space have their own semantic layers and may also use dbt semantic layers. So those kind of transformation layers can be really powerful. There are some, most of them heavily leverage like LLMs. So sometimes you can build it internally. Yeah. Sweet. Yeah.
I work on an open source project called Evidence. We see a lot of our users doing this type of like embedded analytics case. You guys have front end team members. Can you talk us just like a little bit about the collaboration like between you guys and the front end folks and how you work together? Because you see that a lot. In this embedded case, you've got a product team and engineers as well as analytics people who work together.
That's a great question. So the question was front-end, back-end engineering collaboration with data using the semantic layer for the embed use case. And the way our company is structured is that we operate in kind of mini pods. Think of those as startups within the company. There's 10 individual pods. Within each pod, there's front-end engineers, back-end engineers, marketing team, business leads, sales team. And our data, each of the three of us, are embedded within these pods as well. So first thing is we already work really closely together, which really helps us. The second thing, though, is the way we are actually structuring this starts with a Figma, right? This is what the product designer is going to build, what the front end is going to engineer, and ultimately what the customer is going to see. On that Figma, we actually tag our saved queries. We leverage dbt semantic layer saved queries so that each picture within the Figma is directly tagged to a query. And then the front end and back end teams work to build, basically use that saved query with whatever filters they need to add on top of it to execute for that particular image. I am excited that saved queries, soon to be in Explore. I got that confirmation from Roxy earlier, so sneak preview. And what we're excited about pushing the dbt team is to start to get exposures there as well. So it's really clear that lineage graph of data came from here, this was the semantic layer, this is the metric that we're querying, right? This is what's on the graph. This is the saved query that built the query with any group bys, where clauses, et cetera. And then ultimately, the last step is the exposure. It's powering this particular tile on our dashboard.
Just a quick follow-up on that. So are you using saved queries across the board for every external exposure, or are there any direct metric queries you're running?
We use saved queries for almost every exposure, 99%. The only use case that we've had thus far is if we want like reporting infrastructure. So essentially just running direct SQL queries without having to group by, without time dimensions, et cetera. Just like, we just need this data in a list for a pretty table on the front end. We leverage saved queries because we found that it was best for us to define the metrics, the dimensions, the where clauses, et cetera, rather than letting the front end do it themselves for the embed use case. Of course, on the BI use case that we will be kind of embarking on soon, we hope to not use a single saved query and instead allow the user to manipulate the data based on the semantic layer joins.
So on the embedded use case, are there any like user interactions at all, or is it static representation of the data?
On the embedded use case, there's a few user interactions. The cool thing about saved queries is that you can still add additional where clauses, additional order bys, et cetera, after the fact. So we have the ability for the user to add additional group bys if necessary, change the time filters. Hey, I want to look at last 6 months, last 30 days, last 100 days. Or I want to look at only some of my properties, for example, or some of my businesses. Say I'm a property manager that has 100 properties, but I really only care about the Northeast ones right now. You can change last 30-day rent payment to the Northeast region rather than the whole country. Of course. Thank you. Go for it.
Can you flip back in sort of infrastructure diagram?
Yeah. Almost there. Thanks.
What's going on with DuckDB and Dorado over the React local?
That's a great question. It's completely not implemented. This is our data engineer trying to have some fun. One of the areas that we're thinking a lot about is speed. The great thing is that DBT is also thinking a lot about speed. So it's an awesome partnership for us. But when you open a portal, you expect things to load really fast. It's just how the world works. But as you saw before, our data is super complex. We have terabytes of data. These queries take a long time to load. So we're playing with different ideas of where to store that data used for analytical purposes. DuckDB is one. But we haven't tried it yet, so to be determined if it works.
We have tried it, and it works super, super, super well. So we've done an open source thing with actually that DuckDB in the front end. It's amazing. It works super well. Definitely encourage people to use that.
Awesome. Yeah?
Yep. Yeah, so the question was referring to how I asked for help from data eng to spin up Airflow and what our interaction with the data engineering team is like. So basically, our data team is really cross-functional. So the broader data team is 6 of us, our 3 counterparts on data engineering. And like Ben mentioned, we have kind of this pod structure built, so you could think of mini business units, and then we all kind of get deployed across. But as a cross-functional data team, we still, that's kind of like our home base. We still come back together and kind of run through our priorities as a group, share best practices, kind of look at what's on each other's linear boards and all that. So we are pretty closely integrated with them. But we try to just kind of divvy up the work in a way that makes sense, that it's adding value. And we have, only 3 data engineers, big company growing really fast with a lot of ambitious projects. We like to preserve our data engineers' time for value add activities, like building streaming pipelines to ingest hundreds of millions of transactions from MasterCard and Visa, which are just hard problems to solve, and those are the people to do it. They could spin up Airflow and maintain it, but it's not the best use of their time. It really just isn't. And so when we see opportunities to kind of buy or rent in those situations, we usually go for it because, like I said, we really prioritize speed. So yeah. Good question. So the question was, we pursued this embed use case for the partner portals. Basically, how do we decide to prioritize that, and what else is kind of on our roadmap to tackle? The reason we tackled it is because it was highly visible to some very important partners, and frankly, it broke a lot. So we had very direct feedback that it was, falling down, or God forbid, showing incorrect data, or really, God forbid, showing like the wrong data to the wrong entity. And so those things immediately erode trust. And so we really need to make sure, like, if you're gonna get one thing right when you're like processing billions of dollars of rent payments, it's like reporting it correctly and making sure that the property managers, who frankly are taking a chance on us by working with us, right? This upstart, trust us and that everything works. So that's why it was the first thing we were gonna tackle. It's very core to the business, right? We have to get it right. So that was really like, you know, when I came in day one, like our executive leadership was pretty direct. They were like, you need to fix this problem. So we went and fixed it together. But in terms of other things that we would like to do, I think there's a lot of really cool work. We've got a really vast data set. We've really embarked on this journey of LTV modeling, which Ben has been leading a lot of, and just kind of all those kind of classic analytics use cases that I think are really important, but that are hard to get right when a company is growing really fast and when you have like these kind of teams that are running asynchronously and just trying to build fast. Kind of bringing that all together, defining those concepts, is hard to do. And so you need something like DBT to do it. But when we can kind of boil down all of that into simple, easy to understand concepts and then educate the stakeholders on it, like it provides enormous value. So I know for a lot of us, like that is table stakes, right? But doing it in a really fast-paced environment, you know, can be hard. And so that's kind of an area of focus. But that's more immediate term, and I think longer term, a lot more on the Gen AI front.
Sweet. Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate it. We'll hang around if anybody has any more questions.